When you're going fast, but you want to go faster, you get even more injectors for fuel. Because E85 is life, and engines are fun, superchargers are fun, and we must go fast. What's up, guys? Mr. 85 as usual, and today we're in the Marauder changing the injectors and inspecting the harness. As you know, we've had some issues with the shorting of the fuse for injectors, mass airflow, and all that. And it normally seems to only happen at high duty cycle. I was able to look at a data log, and for about 1 to 2 milliseconds, and slightly a few milliseconds before in that data log, you can see the voltage drop off very quickly. And this may be the result of some of the ways the fuel is being delivered from the fuel pump. Of course, in this circumstance, the fuel pressure is dropping because the orifice in the PPRV is too small. And we also have a secondary fuel pump that I've brought in, our fuel pump assembly, to take that PPRV off. And we're going to do a little experiment with that to see if we can get delivery of fuel volume up to the rail, because we have the pressure, we don't have the volume. And then once we use so much volume, obviously, naturally, fluid dynamics, pressure drops. So in this circumstance, this may have pushed the injectors too far, and injectors may be damaged, but there's no way for me to verify that until I test them. Nonetheless, you have to drive the vehicle, so this time we're coming in with a newer and better injector that's slightly larger. These bad boys are from the 2020 GT500, and they're also in the Raptor, and they're also in the 2023 GT500 as well. So we're going to take these, tune them in, and dial them in, and we'll make sure that they work well. All in all, we have to ensure that we also check for shorts in the harness, because shorts in the harness can and do happen. So let's take a look in here. If you look in this area, the injector harness has a lot of places that it can rub. They can even actually rub against each other in between the end of the connector. But the harness itself actually routes around the back side, and the ECM or ECU for us Ford folk actually resides here at the firewall. I can't find any shorts along that path, so I don't suspect that there's shorts there. So we'll keep looking and see what we can find. As we make our way around the actual intake itself, you have a lot of rub points. I found one or two rub points that were actually possibly problematic, but they didn't really show any issues for me that made it to the 12-volt main power to blow a 15 amp fuse. The only time I really see the car short out and stall is if you send it. And that's very hard to find. And the only place I've been able to find any consistency was in the data logs, where the voltage on that rail drops very slowly, but it doesn't per se just short out completely. Now, the issue there is once we lose that fuse, we lose communication with the ECM for data logging anyway. So I would have to use a separate DAC on that power line in order to data log that line. It would have to be dedicated to that. And we're not going to go through all that. We're just going to do some old fashioned troubleshooting and then search for the issue. Nonetheless, this injector is an improvement over the MU52. The GT500 injector is actually going to flow 62 to 65 pound an hour at 60 psi. At standard, it's rated for about 55 versus the MU52, which is rated at 52, and that's at 40 psi. So, in reviewing everything and getting that injector, this injector is also an improvement in design. Now, one of the reasons this injector is an improved injector compared to the MU52 is, for one, I don't have to use the adapters. It is a full length EV14 fuel injector from Bosch. One other aspect as well is this injector has 12 pin tiles instead of 1, 2, 4, or 6. The ME52 has 6, and this is why we chose it. But we didn't think about these injectors at the time, which obviously I put these injectors in a lot earlier in the course of almost 2 years ago, a year and a half roughly. It's running on 2 years. Time's moving by pretty quickly. So this is going to be a better injector for atomization, especially with E85, super cold starts, and everything else. And so we're also going to experiment with the data from this injector, which I got from the GT500 tune anyway. I just took the GT500 tune, collected the data, and compiled that. You can actually go to the Mr. E85 Facebook page, and I have that data for these injectors there, but that was only the raw data. Once I put everything in, we're actually going to verify that data and see that it's correct. So I'm just transitioning here. So we're going to make sure that data is correct. All in all, everything else in the engine looks great. One of the other initiatives we want to do is better filtering, because that air filter does allow a bit of sand, and I'm in a highly sandy environment. I mean, you can see the sand on the car just in the general video, just dirt. And she needs a wash after we finish the work. So we're going to move over to that, and then we're going to see how things do. Right, so injectors are swapped out. We're driving the vehicle. Things feel pretty good. Startup was pretty much instantly spot on. I have one issue with the parameter that for some reason the tune just doesn't work at all when I make that change. And that's something I'll look deeper into, but not a big deal. It's just the high slope. The high slope between the two is about 0.6 off. So car feels great, car feels smoother, starts a lot faster. And I'm going to chalk that up to just a better injector driver, better pin tiles, and this time everything is aligned because it can actually face that direction. The plug gap sits high enough. Now when I say plug gap, not spark plug gap, but the physical gap from the EV14 US car plug from the valve covers allows me to center the valve cover, to center the injector exactly where I need it to be at. So the car is feeling a lot better just overall as I evaluate and drive around. There will be a little bit more driving that I do. Full tank, everything looks good thus far. I'll be parking the vehicle. We're going to look over some data logs to make small tweaks to the adaptives, because adaptives, I'm looking about 10% rich, which isn't horrible, but that's outside of the range I would like to be. We were generally about plus or minus 2 to 5%, and that's just due to ethanol content variation. So I'm going to kick that up a little bit to catch up with the difference in the flow properties of these injectors. And once I make that change, then I shouldn't have any other problems. So, I mean, the car drives great. It drives fine. Like I say, we're a little on the richer side. So I'm going to make those adjustments, bump us a little leaner so we're meaner. And then we'll continue on to the next phase, which at this point is honestly just to simply see how the data logs look and then make some very small fine tweaks. So all in all, these differences in the two injectors I definitely feel, and we'll also evaluate fuel economy when that part comes up as well, because fuel economy is important, and fuel economy changes once you make these types of changes. So we'll see what we get.